Too simplistic. Doesn't view the big picture. I think the hardest part of having, a channel where I talk about every team, I see all 31 team stories. I see the Arizona Coyotes are playing better. Now they've won 2 in a row. Who knew? I see storylines for every team. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, to me, are just another team. And maybe that's part of the issue with some Leafs fans, is I treat them exactly the same as every other team in the league. I don't give them any preferred billing. I don't give them any preferred status. I look at them for what they are. They're a young team. They're unproven. There's some good young pieces there. Did I think they were a contender before the season started? Mildly. I thought they were a year out, and I still say they're a year out. Meaning I don't think this is their year. I think next year could be their year. The funny thing is, 2 years ago, the conversation we would be having is just how bad are the Leafs? Are they historically bad? Are they going to lose the draft lottery? How bad can this get? And now it's gone so far the other way, where it's almost like there's days where I'm like, wow, these young Leafs are really learning, and their defense core doesn't look all that great. But I know that if I come in here and I say that, I'm going to get, you're biased. Even though I see and say the same thing with other teams, like Tampa. Tampa was playing like crap before tonight. They beat Chicago. Vasilevsky puts them on their back and says, let's go. The Leafs are tricky. You look at this record since Christmas. That's where I went. 4 wins, 4 losses, 4 overtime losses. So they've won 4 out of 12, or they've lost 4 in regulation out of 12. Here's the problem. At the start of the season, I had Ottawa Senators fans on my channel saying that when I talked about how the Senators were losing in overtime, that doesn't matter because they're not losing in regulation. So I should focus on the fact that they don't lose games in regulation, they lose them in overtime. That's no longer the conversation with Ottawa. Ottawa's gone the other way. And we can all point at the Duchesne trade and say, that's when it happened. But it was starting before that. Before they lost Kyle Turris, Ottawa wasn't good enough. They weren't winning 50% of their games. And for me, the fact Toronto is not winning 50% of their games is troubling. If you look at their record, so okay, they beat Arizona 7-4. Let's just look at their wins. They beat Arizona 7-4. They beat San Jose in a shootout. They beat Vancouver in a shootout. They beat Ottawa 4-3. They haven't beaten anybody since Christmas. They beat Ottawa. They beat Arizona. And then there's 2 shootout wins in there. That's troubling. And it's funny because if I was talking about any other team in the league, I wouldn't get flack for it. If I was talking about any other team in the league, I wouldn't have people coming in saying, you're crazy. They're great. They're awesome. It was, I think, 3 weeks ago, I had Toronto at 10th on the power rankings, and somebody said, you have to have them at 10th? I'm out of here. I'm unsubscribing. This is so biased. Well, now they're at 18th. They were at 19th when I did the power rankings. Right now they're at 18th. They had been 17th, and then they lost tonight, and they dropped to 18th. There's no bias in the way I do this. You look at this. So, okay, their only regulation wins are over Arizona and Ottawa. Name a team in the NHL that could only win 2 games since Christmas over Arizona and Ottawa, and you would be okay with them being in the top 15 in the power rankings. Name them. This win was a come from behind, and this win was sloppy. Then you look at their other results. Colorado, that game they probably should have won, and they lost. So I'll just put a little star here. Next to games they probably should have won and lost. Tampa, they played Tampa very well, but they lost. Now, the Toronto game against Vancouver, they were losing to Vancouver, and Vancouver let up off the gas, and Toronto gets a win in the shootout, largely because Vancouver just couldn't hold a lead. The Columbus game, Columbus beats Toronto. Toronto probably should have won that one. The St. Louis game, St. Louis had a 1-0 lead in the third, and they blew it, and they lost in overtime. The Philly game, they totally should have won that one, and you can add Colorado tonight. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games they should have won and didn't. It doesn't matter. It's a dirty little secret. The standings don't care. And when I'm trying to figure out where to put guys on my board, I don't care whether they should have won it or not. Because, have you guys got this ingrained? All right. If you don't, let's go through the rest. They lost to Vegas. Okay, so that's a loss to Vegas. I'll put that as an O. They legitimately lost to Ottawa. So that's 2 convincing losses in their last 12 games. So again, it depends on your point of view. If you're a Toronto fan, you could be watching this and going, you know what? We've only really got beat badly twice. In terms of they actually were outplayed. But there's another way to look at this. They've lost 6 games they should have won. That's a lot of points they gave up. It's a lot of points to give up. So, I'm going to do it this way, okay? So if I'm doing... This is for power rankings. You look at win, you look at loss, and then you look at OT or shootout. If they win, they move up. If they lose, they move down. If they lose to a team that's below them, it's going to affect them more than if they lose to a team that's above them on the power rankings. That's the way I do it. If they beat a team that's above them, it affects more than if they beat a team that's below them. That's just the way it works. Overtime is less impressive to me than winning in regulation. To me, a regulation win is more decisive. And a shootout win or loss, I treat the same as a tie. I give more credit. Let's say you lose in a shootout in Tampa. I'm going to give you more credit for that than if you lose in a shootout in Arizona or Buffalo. There is nothing in the way I do this that cares who they are. Nothing. The only time that my opinion comes in is when a team has won a couple of games or lost a couple of games, and I'm looking at those 2 games, and sometimes I'll go as high as 3 and say, well, benefit of the doubt, or can't give them benefit of the doubt yet. For instance, with where Arizona is. So you've got your Las Vegas and your Tampa, and at the other end, you've got Arizona and Buffalo, who are tied right now in points. When I look at where these guys are at, it makes a difference. Somewhat. Arizona would have to win probably 4 or 5 in a row to really start moving up through that bottom row. It has to be more than 2, because for them to win 2, and for me to bump them up, it would mean that I'd be bumping them ahead of Montreal, Ottawa, and Vancouver. Now, for me to do that, I have to see some wins from them first before I'll say, yes, they're playing better hockey than Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver. Because here's the other side of it. Here's the other problem. And I talked about this in the power rankings last week with the Hockey News. It just looks reactionary. It doesn't mean anything. When I look at my power rankings, whether it's week 13, 14, 15, or 16, what I'm saying is right now, if your team is here and they're moving their way slowly up, that means that next week they should continue to win, or they should at least be more competitive. And for a team that's dropping slowly in the coming week, and I've seen this. I've seen where I have teams gradually moving their way up, and then Sunday night I watch games and I'm like, yeah, all right, they're still moving up, or this team's still moving down. It has to be gradual. And in Toronto's case, it's been a gradual move down. The other argument that I find funny is this one. Okay, so last week the Ducks beat the Kings, right? And when I did the power rankings, Anaheim is below LA, and right away people are like, wait a minute, we beat LA, why are we below them? But since then, LA's won a game and lost one, and I think Anaheim's lost both. Direct head-to-head matchups don't work, and I'll tell you why. So you have LA, San Jose, and Anaheim. And LA's on its way down, San Jose's on its way up, and Anaheim right now is kind of holding steady. If San Jose beats LA 4-2, then goes into Anaheim and loses 3-1, then Anaheim goes to LA and wins 3-2, let's say in a shootout, can you see the issue? You might have a case where LA looks worse here and looks better here. Or let's say, just to make it complicated, more complicated, that happens. Where LA wins, loses. One result can't affect things that much. So one of the things that drives me nuts is when I see, oh, so if our team beats that team, are we going to be 8th on the next power rankings? No. No. That's not how it works at all. It's on any one given night, any team can beat any team. It doesn't mean that they're the better team overall. It means they were better that night. Power rankings don't just measure who won last night. Because if they did, well, Arizona, when I wake up tomorrow, should be about 15th because they won last night. And they won a couple nights before that, so they should be right up around the middle of the league, shouldn't they? No. I even tried at work today to figure out a point system, and I went, nah. And it wouldn't be for this year, obviously. It'd be for next year. And I looked at it and I went, no, forget it. Because a point system will ultimately fail. Because of things that I've been talking about. So there's my closest to an analysis that I'm going to get with Toronto. Their scoring is having issues. Now they got Morgan Riley out until after the All-Star break. That's crippling to a team that already had issues on its blue line. And while Freddie Anderson's playing very well, he needs better defense in front of him. I like Borgman, but Borgman coughs up the puck. I like Zaitsev. Zaitsev was better last year than he's been this year. And I know Leaf fans really like Connor Carrick, but I really think they need an upgrade in their top 6, and I think Carrick's probably the one that's going to go at the end of the day. So there you go. The video I said I wasn't going to do this week, where I kind of explain power rankings a little bit and kind of explain why the Leafs are sitting where they're at. And again, I get it. If you're looking just at, well, we've only lost 4 in regulation, okay, but you've only won 2 in regulation. Apples to oranges, you know, it's all a matter of how you look at it. And when it comes down to it, I do the rankings the way I do them because it works. The funniest part of all is when I see that I'm a homer and I've got the Canucks at 28th or 29th. That I find really funny. I find that genuinely funny. And I've got Dallas fans every week ragging on me that I have the Stars too low. Every week Dallas fans say, you're too hard on your own teams, you got them too low. And in the exact same thread, you'll see fans saying, you're such a homer. Why are the Leafs so low? And the reason I get it is this. I know there's a lot of Leaf fans who are going to watch this and say, you know what, I agree with you. And I get it. There are those really vocal minority that just, you know, constantly go on and on and on. I have no problem defending my rankings, and I do it often. But I will say this. This is the last time I'm going to address the Toronto thing. Because it's been addressed. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your patience getting through this. And again, I have no animosity towards the Toronto Maple Leafs. None. None. Zero. It is insane to say that I have animosity towards Toronto when a year ago I was being criticized for talking too much about Toronto and being told I was turning into a Toronto fanboy. It is so weird. But again, when I report on all 31 teams, there's going to be a perception that I ignore or I have a bias against certain teams when it's just not there. When you have 31 teams to talk about and you say, all right, I got 10 minutes to talk, there's a limited amount of time you have to talk. And there's certain teams that demand more attention than others. And I've said it before, sometimes when your team is talked about the least, it means you're doing very well. The teams I have a lot to talk about are usually the ones that are having problems. So this ends my video on the Leafs. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.